everybody. I am Lucius Irvin. Let's see here. And I am the founder and owner of Mindful Recovery Coach. I'll just start by saying a few things about me. I am an educator, and I am also a personal development coach and recovery coach for people mainly with substance misuse, but I do coaching for other people as well. I started out in education a little bit later. People in my family either are they're in the education field, or they are in the medical field. Hey, Mallory. And I tried I tried going into the medical field, but I don't like needles, so that didn't last very long. So I came into education knowing that it is a wonderful, beautiful profession, while also understanding that it is extremely stressful, and the long hours. And I was not fooled by the summers off, and breaks and stuff like that. I was well aware. But after being in education for a couple of years, the reality of the stress really set in, and I found myself where I think a lot of educators find themselves with an amazing amount of stress and a strong desire to help young people, but not knowing how to deal with my level of stress. I also had students who were dealing with their own stress and trauma, and while I worked to develop relationships with them, there were points at which students would come in the morning, and I could see, from their eyes that were kind of glazed over, that something had happened before they got to school, and no matter how much I tried, I could not connect with them. And oftentimes, I would call it what I call they would spin out, and they would, behavior issues would arise, and they would usually end up in the principal's office. And so I really wanted to try to find something that students could take with them. Schools are really good at providing some structure and supports while students are in school, but as soon as they leave school, either at the end of the day or at graduation, those supports stay with us, and the student doesn't have those anymore. So I wanted to find some skills or supports that students could take with them, while also finding something that could help make my teaching more sustainable. And I came upon mindfulness. I was really skeptical at first. I call myself a skeptical optimist. I don't. I'm very skeptical about whether things will work, but I'm optimistic that they might work, and I'm willing to try things. And so I jumped in, exploring mindfulness, really with the idea of helping my students primarily. But part of the training that I did was I had to establish a practice, personal mindfulness practice myself, in order to get to the curriculum that I could teach to the students. And through that process, I found some much needed skills in order to deal with my own stress, to reconnect with myself, and to come from a better baseline in order to support my students. I was always the person who, if there was a self-care professional development, I would say I'm going to go to anything else other than that. Now I really recognize the need for taking care of myself and starting with myself. And it has made a world of difference, both in my profession and in my personal life, my family life. And so if you're resistant to it, you're good company, but I'm telling you from personal experience that it can be beneficial. So, just to start with, what is mindfulness? Mindfulness simply is paying attention on purpose to our present experience without judgment. So there's kind of four parts to that. Paying attention, you know, many of us as teachers, we can pay attention. We oftentimes pay attention. We multitask, which there really isn't anything called. There really isn't multitasking. It just means we're changing our focus really rapidly, and we become really skilled at that. But we're paying attention on purpose. So we're bringing some intentionality into what we're doing. Oftentimes, as educators, we might, we're doing many things at once, which can be beneficial, but we might have a difficult time sustaining attention on one thing for long periods of time. And so with mindfulness, we're intentional about focusing on one thing and beginning to extend our focus time on that thing. And with mindfulness, we might start really small, and we build upon it. So we're paying attention on purpose. If we could just do those two things, mindfulness would be, an amazing practice by itself. But it adds two more dimensions. The first is we're paying attention on purpose to our present experience. Oftentimes we get caught in past, or more likely as educators, we're caught in the future. And we're planning and we're trying to make sure that we have everything prepped and prepared, and so, which can be very helpful, but it can get our thoughts in a loop. If we were in a room, I would say, okay, who has a difficult time going to sleep and staying asleep at night? And most people will raise their hands. Who has a difficult time just sitting down and taking a breath for a few minutes? And the list goes on of things that we as educators can struggle with. So we're bringing our attention to the present moment. And oftentimes, and we'll talk about this in the next couple days when I talk again with how we can help students, we oftentimes can root ourselves in our five senses, sight, smell, touch, taste, and hearing, because those are with us all the time. And so then we have the last part is without judgment, which is the most, I think, most unique and most powerful aspect of mindfulness, because oftentimes our brains bring in information and decipher it, put it into categories, and oftentimes what we're left with is a judgment as to whether this is good or whether this is bad, helpful or not helpful. Once again, that's how our brains work. It can be very helpful, but at the end of the day, we can get caught on this loop of judging things. Our students, just reflecting for yourself. How often do you think and talk to your colleagues about students who are not good or are good students? Okay, that's a characterization. That's a judgment, and maybe it has a place, maybe it doesn't. But when we set those two judgments in stone, we limit our ability to see other characteristics of that person, that process, that experience. And so we with mindfulness, we can step back, because what happens is we get entangled with all those judgments in our daily lives. We get entangled in such a way that it's difficult. It's like we can't see the forest for the trees. And so with mindfulness, we're starting to pull one thread out at a time, and we're focusing on it and giving it our full attention. And we're suspending some of that judgment, because judgment can be harsh. If we're once again, if we were in a room, I would ask people to check in with themselves and say, how many of you all have low self-esteem, or that negative self-talk, and if we really are honest about our assessment of that, many of us have that. And that's what drives us as educators, because we want to do better. We want to do. And so we can use it in a helpful way, but that judgment can wear us down too. And so mindfulness is the ability to not only suspend that judgment, but to apply a bit of compassion to ourselves, to the process, our experience, and to our students. And I'll give just a quick example of this. When I was starting my mindfulness practice, I had a student. I worked diligently on building a relationship with her, but she was one of the students that would walk in, and I could tell her eyes were glazed over and something had happened, and I just couldn't connect with her, and she would spin out. And what would happen would be I would be at the front of the class. She would come up and she would start yelling at me in my face. And so I was thinking, okay, how can I bring my experience back to the present moment, disengage with her a little bit so that I can focus on my breathing and check in with my emotions at the point. And I thought, well, I'll use her coming up as a reminder, because I know it's going to happen. And so surely the next day she came up, she started yelling at me, and I forgot. I was not mindful, and I went behind my desk in the back of the room, and at that point I had my desk closed off. There wasn't an escape route, and she came up and she would continue to yell at me, and I remembered, oh wait, I need to step back, breathe. And I had thought about a way to remind myself and to almost thank her. I would, instead of saying anything to her, I would just smile in gratitude that she was reminding me to practice mindfulness. And I did that. I smiled, and the whole class was like, oh, Mr. Irvin smiling. Like, they had seen me react in different ways with this student. And I, through being able to establish a sense of mindfulness, was able to respond in a different way. And that's what mindfulness can give us as educators, a way to reestablish our baseline and instead of reacting, respond. And oftentimes we can respond in kinder, more caring, compassionate ways. So how do we do this? I do training. I have training courses through Mindful Recovery Coach. I do, like I said, primarily I target people who are in recovery from substance misuse, but really my training is available and applicable to everybody, including educators. So, so if you want more information, I have a month-long, 4-week training course where you actually dive in and you learn practices and establish a mindfulness practice. But short of that, there are other ways that we can begin to do this. One way, there's apps on our phones. One thing that I tell people is just to start with a minute to 3 minutes of just stopping and focusing on our breath. And one way that we can do that is that we can focus our attention, so we're paying attention on purpose to our present experience. We focus our attention on our belly, And as we're breathing in, we become aware of the experience of the expansion of the belly and the contraction of the belly. So you can take just a moment for yourself, kind of find a position that works best for you. If you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes, or you can kind of soften your gaze, meaning you can look down and not focusing on anything. It helps to minimize distractions. And we can begin to notice as we breathe in, notice the breath all the way down to the belly, and from the belly, becoming aware of the breath all the way up and out. Once again, breathing in, watching the breath, and noticing the breath as it comes up and back out. And as we breathe in this time, we can focus our attention on our belly, on that region of our belly, and begin to notice, what does it feel like for the belly to begin to expand? We can even put one hand on our belly and one hand on our chest to begin to notice the movement. Just becoming aware of the expansion of the belly as we breathe in. And the contraction of the belly as we breathe out. And our minds will wander, surely, but just bringing intentionally our awareness back to that place, that bell at the belly, and noticing. So that's just a short practice. One thing that I let people know is, this doesn't have to be done in a specific location. When I started practicing mindfulness, I would often do it before I got out of the car to go to work, and I would set my timer. I'd set it on my phone or my watch for a minute, up to 3 minutes, and I would just practice. I would get in touch with my breathing. I would reconnect, and then I would go to work. And then when I left work, I would try to do it again. And it would help me to, once I sat in my car, that was the indicator. Oh wait, I need to practice. I'd be holding stress in my body, and I'd be like, oh wait, okay, set the timer so you don't have to worry about it, and just practice for just a minute and begin to explore what it's like. And it might be extremely uncomfortable at first, because what happens is our nervous system is ramped up oftentimes, especially by the end of the day. And so we're beginning to notice that, and if we can sustain that time of just sitting still and noticing our experience, our nervous system begins to slow down a little bit and readjust. So those are all, there's a few other things, and I'm going to finish up here in 1 minute. I don't want to take too much time, but setting your timer on the hour, so that every hour you can at least be reminded to take a breath in and notice, I'm breathing, I'm here. and that one breath can help throughout. That consistent remembering to breathe and being mindful and aware that we need to breathe and that we are breathing can be such a lot of teachers, we use like brain breaks for the kids. This is a way to help us reset and reestablish our baseline. So there's a lot more that I can say about this. I do have a few resources. I have a Facebook group that I have, and really it's a way for I put some positive quotes on there and positive stuff. I just put the link in there for that. I do have a website, mindfulrecoverycoach.org, and I will also put in my contact information here so that if you want to reach out to me. These are just a few ways that we can begin to find our baseline, reconnect, so that we can really more sustainably do the work that we want to do. And so hopefully this is helpful. We'll talk on Wednesday, I believe, about how we can begin to implement this and how it might be helpful for students. Thank you all so much for watching, and I look forward to hearing from some of you. Thanks.